So good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome all our stakeholders, staff, media, members of the public, and of course our staff who are here for today's meeting. I'm pleased to be here for my second commission meeting, and over the past month I've been learning an awful lot, getting to know my fellow commissioners and the NRC staff as well. It's a fantastic place. I'm enjoying it very much. Today is the 8th commission meeting on the events that took place in Fukushima, Japan on March 11th, 2011. We're going to hear about the status of actions taken in response to the lessons learned from Fukushima Dai-ichi, including an update on the NRC staff's progress in addressing the near-term task force's recommendations and other action items. We're going to hear about actions from the nuclear industry and perspectives from the public.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. The purpose of this briefing is to update you on this NRC's efforts to implement the lessons learned from the Fukushima Dai-ichi accident. With me today at the table are Jim Wiggins, who's the Director of Nuclear Security, the Office of Nuclear Security and Incident Response, Brian Sharon, who's the Director of the Office of Nuclear Regulatory Research, Eric Leeds, who's the Director of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. All three members, of course, of the steering committee that we've established. Also at the table is Dave Skeen, who is the Director of the Japan Lessons Learned Project Directorate. I should note that other members of the steering committee are behind me in the well, and I'd also like to recognize the Japanese Lessons Learned Directorate and other members of the staff, managers and staff, who have really been the backbone of our efforts to date. Next slide, please. As has been pointed out, we last briefed the Commission in October 2011, and since that time we've covered much ground. I'll provide an overview of the agency's lessons learned efforts. Following that, Dave is going to talk about Tier 1 and Tier 2 and provide a status update. And then following that, Dr. Sharon, Brian is going to provide an overview of our Tier 3 efforts and, in fact, delve into two specific examples to provide greater detail for the Commission. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to report that we've made significant progress in learning lessons from Fukushima. I believe that we've made real plans and the staff has taken real actions. And these efforts are already leading to enhanced safety at the plants. We recognize the role of the Commission in terms of establishing the policy direction that we have undertaken that has really been set the stage for the process that we've been able to make to date. And of course, we would not have been able to make progress without the frequent productive engagements that we've had with all of our external stakeholders. We've benefited from that. We've, in addition, engaged the Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards and benefited from their diligent reviews and their insightful recommendations. We've also briefed the national academies in preparation to help them with their study on lessons learned of the events of Fukushima nuclear plant. May I have the next slide, please? This next slide and the slide after really provide the major milestones in the plan to identify and implement Fukushima lessons learned. On July 13th and SECI 120095, we provided Tier 3 plans. We also provided a 6-month status update of where we are with respect to implementing Tier 2 and Tier 3 issues. And as you can see in this slide, we are on schedule with implementing the Tier 1 issues, and we're making continued progress on Tier 2 and Tier 3. Next slide, please. Looking forward, from final issuance or issuance of the final guidance for implementing the requirements in the orders and completing the seismic and flooding walkdowns and completing the EP staffing and communication evaluations, all the way through to final implementation of all the actions. As you can see, we still have a lot of work to do. I should point out that plans are good. No plans are perfect, and we're going to need to remain open as we move along to learning lessons and revising and reevaluating, readjusting our plans to make sure that we continue to implement the lessons learned. Next slide, please. In pursuing our lessons learned efforts, we've continued to adhere to several principles Among those principles are, first and foremost, that we don't distract either our focus or the focus of the plants from operational safety. Those are points that were made, I think, very well by the panelists in the previous panel. We also want to make sure that we don't displace work that is of greater safety benefit or higher priority or that is necessary for continued safe operation of the plants. I'm pleased to report that we continue to make progress on activities such as the National Fire Protection Association NFPA 805 and Generic Safety Issue 191, assessment of debris accumulation on pressurized water sump performance. And of course, earlier this year, we issued first combined licenses for Summer and Vogel. So as you can see, we do continue to do other high priority activity. Lastly, we need to move forward promptly, and we need to make sure that we get it right the first time. May I have the next slide, please? Slide provides definition of the tiers. I'll keep it for reference, but I'll touch on it. Next slide, please. I want to mention just three items that are not really the focus of today's briefing, but are related nonetheless. One is consideration of filtered vents as a part of recommendation 5.1, which is a tier 1 recommendation to order licensees to include a reliable hardened vent on BWR Mark 1 and Mark 2 containments. The order for reliable hardened vents was issued, of course, in March. The staff continues to make progress in evaluating the policy and the technical issues associated with providing filter vents and also making those hardened vents severe accident capable. We will provide recommendations to the Commission in November with respect to these issues. We're also making progress on the near-term task force recommendation 1 that was addressed, talked about to some extent in the previous panel. That recommendation really is for the establishment of a logical and systematic regulatory framework for adequate protection that appropriately balances defense in depth and risk considerations. I'm using really the language in the near-term task force, that report that refers to that item. The staff will provide the Commission with a set of recommendations in February of 2013. We have been engaging with stakeholders in terms of working our efforts to be able to deliver on that product. And then finally, though not associated with NRC's lessons learned efforts, the staff has underway an assessment related to how the agency considers economic consequences in our regulatory framework. We plan to provide this assessment, including options and a recommendation to the Commission later this month.